Rob Lynch is now the new CEO of Shake Shack, formerly was in the corner office at Papa John's. Any plans to bring pizza to the Shake Shack menu?
No.
Well, don't say I didn't give you any ideas to toy with.
I didn't say never, I said no.
Do you see prices dropping as inflation stabilizes?
If you can get 10 chicken nuggets for $1, you should start to wonder.
The Israel-Hamas conflict in particular has been a huge point of contention on college campuses, certainly within businesses. You all opened your first restaurant in Tel Aviv in Israel in February, and from that came petitions to boycott the chain. Did you expect that response?
Well,
Hello, I'm Ruth Umoh, leadership editor and host of Fortune Executive Exchange. What started out as a hot dog cart in Madison Square Park in 2001 has now transformed into a $4 billion global behemoth. We're talking, of course, about the popular fast casual restaurant Shake Shack. And we have founder Danny Meyer in studio alongside Randy Garutti, who has just recently stepped down as CEO of the company, to talk about what lies ahead for the burger empire. But before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below to share your thoughts on this conversation. All right, welcome to the both of you. Danny, Randy, congrats on 24 years at Shake Shack.
Thank you.
Congrats on keeping him for 24 years at Shake Shack. I'm sure that was no easy
I think he kept me.
feat.
I think it's the opposite.
Fantastic. Well, Randy, the big news is that you've officially announced that after roughly 2 decades at Shake Shack, you will be stepping down. What prompted that decision?
that's a tough question to
I'm
start
sure.
with. It's been the best ride ever. Danny and I have been working together in some form, in some kind of restaurants for 24 years. And the better part of that's been building Shake Shack. And I've been so lucky to be a part of it. I don't think in our wildest dreams, when he created the first, and then I came on really at the second, that we thought maybe there could be 5, 10, maybe. And today we're almost 540 Shake Shacks in 19 countries. And the team has achieved more than we ever dreamed. And I think it's just time for the next stage of leadership to take place. For me, it's about my opportunity to step back a little bit and not miss any more basketball games with my kids, be home a little bit more, and just contemplate and thank everybody for this incredible ride.
Yeah, you called it a wild ride. I'm sure it was a fun ride as well. What
So
attracted you initially, and then to you, what did you see in him in those early days?
Well, I met Randy before Shake Shack. So when you talk about 24 years, the first 6 of those years, I think, were Randy working in our restaurants. First, as a very, very young general manager at our Indian restaurant called Tabla, and then to our first restaurant, my first restaurant, Union Square Cafe, which was like giving him the keys to the family car.
Yes.
And then after that, Randy went on to become the youngest ever director of operations for all of our fine dining restaurants, including places like Gramercy Tavern and 11 Madison Park. And at that point, we had just opened the Modern at the Museum of Modern Art as well. And when we all saw that this complete kind of accident, Shake Shack in Madison Square Park was just going bonkers. And something that we had opened on a lark to take care of Madison Square Park, to do something to raise money for the park. When we saw that we actually had a really bona fide business on our hands, Randy had been spending a lot of time outside of 11 Madison Park and Tabla helping those guys. And he hit a certain point, he said, give me the ball. If you'll let me, really run with this thing, I think I can make something of it. But we didn't have a second Shake Shack for 5 years. And that's only because Randy kept pushing, saying, I think we have something here. We should really do something.
You gave him the keys to the family car. He didn't ding it up too badly over the last 24 years.
A couple,
So
we've got some dents, that's for sure. But the car's still driving probably better than ever.
What attracted you initially?
Well, I've been working in restaurants since I was 13. I worked in a bagel shop making $3.50 an hour when I was a kid. And I always loved restaurants. And I worked at Chili's and I worked in hotels, and I just had spent a lot of time. And actually, this is a story we don't even talk about. We haven't talked about this in forever. In the 90s, at some point, long before I ever even met Danny, I knew of Union Square Cafe, and I was home from one of the crazy places I was living in I went to Union Square Cafe with some friends, and we walked in, and that was like at the height of Union Square Cafe.
Wait, today is the height
Good
of
point.
Union Square Cafe.
Good point. So 35 years later, how many years are we in? Anyway, it was you couldn't get in. And I walked in on Friday night, and they said, obviously we're booked, but you know what? Hang out for a second. Maybe we can get you one of these front tables in the front that were always held for walk-ins. And I sat down and had this amazing meal. And my career then kind of went other places until we eventually met. But I remember feeling like, hey, wait a second. This is like a kind of hospitality in New York that I had never seen before. And then years later, we came to pass that we met.
Yeah.
And then it was a couple years after that we worked together.
And the story there, which I've told some friends before, but I got a call one day sitting in my basement office at Gramercy Tabla. And back in the days before there was the internet. And it was, you'd come back after lunch service and see a stack of little blue pads of paper. And one of them said, call Chris Canlis with a Seattle number. I didn't know who Chris was, and I couldn't look him up because there was no internet. And so I called him back, and he goes, listen, you don't know me from Adam, but I've got the greatest gift you're ever going to get. And the only way you get it is you don't get to ask any questions. And I said, okay. And he said, there's a young man who's been working for me. He and my son were roommates up at Cornell. And he's coming back home east. And you need to meet him because he's going to change your business.
Here we are.
There he
that
was.
was 2000.
I still want to pivot to discuss Shake Shack's rise over the years. But for you, is this retirement? Is it a pivot? Is it something else?
It's such a weird word. I don't know how,
Yeah.
listen, I'm 49 years old. I'm pretty
That's
sure
very
I want
young.
to continue to make some impact on the
Yeah.
world. So who knows? I will never say never. This, especially being a public company CEO for almost 10 years now. We're in our 10th year at Shake Shack as a public company. The quarterly life is busy. And I'm happy to retire from that, at least for some period of time. I think my greatest and best use in the world is helping young leaders see what they're capable of. And I want to do that in some way, whether that's coaching a basketball team or leading another company day or working with Danny, who the heck knows. I just know that for now, it's time, and it's time to step back and think about it a little bit.
I mean, not to be apocryphal about your new hire as CEO, but we have seen Bob Iger, Howard Schultz, a lot of Boomerang CEOs. So who knows where you'll be 10 years, 15 years down the line.
You won't see me doing anything but supporting our new CEO, and you certainly won't see me writing any letters publicly about Shake Shack. I'm just going to be, my job is to be Shack's biggest fan right now.
Fair enough. The median tenure for a CEO is roughly 5 years. So you're by and large a long tenured CEO. I am curious, when does one know that it is time to move on? And I'm also curious how you responded to the news.
That's a really good question. I think I started to know a few years ago, and before the pandemic and before all that change in our life. And then we went through that, which was one of those like, okay, well, there's no way I'm leaving now. Like we gotta get through this. We gotta right the ship. This was a tough, pandemic was hard for Shake Shack and our teams. We went through so many emotional, challenging business decisions. And I think I'll look back as those are some of the hardest times of my life, but also some of the most rewarding. And coming out of that, as we last year just started to really right the ship and Shake Shack, every bit of Shake Shack's momentum right now has been straight upward. I felt like, you know what, there's an amazing group of leaders who built this, and they're ready for new leadership, and they themselves are ready to grow in their own way. And I just felt like it was the right time. And my oldest kid is a sophomore in high school, and I don't want to miss another second. And it was my wife and I talked about it for years, and we just kind of knew. And it was time. And it was hard. It was hard to sit down with him and tell him.
Talk to us about that.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that whether you're a CEO or, the starting pitcher on a championship baseball team, to know when it's time is a rare thing. And to be able to know it's time when you're on top is the rarest thing there is. And I just have so much respect for Randy for understanding that. Look, I've been a CEO for many years, and I came to the conclusion 2 years ago that it was my time. Now, I'm executive chairman of Union Square Hospitality Group, remain chairman of Shake Shack, but I think it's time for a whole host of different reasons. In Randy's case, There's the business aspects of knowing it's time, and as you heard him say, there's the family aspects of it. To have 3 kids who are as young as they are, and you have no idea what a devoted dad Randy is. He coaches his kids' team. I don't know how you travel the entire globe and do all that, but there's also the personal side, which is to say that what is my best and highest use? And I think any great CEO, every day they should be saying, what are all the things that only I can do? And what are all the other things that there's now someone else on the team who could do at least as well or better? And so you should be constantly promoting yourself so that others can be promoted. And I think you get to a point at a certain level of saying, you know what, there's a sizable number of things that others could do at this stage of our business at least as well as I can. But I think that another hallmark of Randy's leadership, and I think of any great leader, is humility. And to say, I'm not the only one who could do this thing. I was really good. Company couldn't have gotten here without me. But now what if somebody else could take it even further?
Yeah, I think you do realize that there's a series of gifts that I have that were right for that time, and things that I enjoy. And I think in this next phase, there's a different series of gifts and enjoyment. And I think I recognize that next phase, there's probably other people who can do it better than me, and right on, let's go. I want Shaq to win.
Absolutely. Well, that's a perfect segue into my next point of conversation. Rob Lynch is now the new CEO of Shake Shack. Formerly was in the corner office at Papa John's. What did you see in him? I'm sure as executive chairman at Shake Shack, you played a heavy hand in tapping the next successor.
Well, we had a fantastic committee for succession planning, a search committee of another 4 people, 2 of whom have been seriously successful leaders in public restaurant companies as well.
Anyone you want to share?
Sure, I'll share all of them with you. Chuck Chapman, Jeff Lawrence, Lori George from Coca-Cola, and who am I missing here?
A lot of people on the board. Jeff Flug and Josh Silverman, who's the CEO of Etsy. Great CEO. Group of people who was helping with this.
Everybody really took this very seriously. Yeah. And for example, the people who worked for Rob, an enormously outsized proportion of them have gone on to become really effective leaders themselves. And one of the things that Randy talked about, and more importantly did year after year at Shake Shack, is to make a real priority that your greatest job as a leader is to create tomorrow's leaders. And if you don't do that, the real way you can see a great leader is to see her followers. And so while we couldn't really check Rob himself, it was really easy to find out who were the people who had once reported to Rob, who had then gone on to have really successful careers as leaders, and you see his thumbprints all over it.
That's a great metric of success. You also mentioned the fact that he'd overseen a large company that is Papa John's, and you mentioned leadership qualities, and I think that's a bit of an arbitrary, nebulous term. What does that look like in practice? I mean, what leadership qualities are you looking for to take Shake Shack into its next iteration, into its next evolution?
The ability to build trust authentically, courageously, and with humility. Those are probably the 3 things I would say. And you can't just say, today I'm going to come to work to build trust. That is one human interaction after another, sometimes for years. But I think that when you build trust and you're willing to make courageous decisions, people will come along with you for the ride when they understand why. Of the many, many gifts that Randy has brought to Shake Shack, I think the deeply embedded appreciation and celebration of the contributions of the team member is something that is a hallmark of our culture.
Let me ask you this, because I love the phrase, your leaders build and develop in leaders. That's your MO at Shake Shack. Why not then tap someone internally who was under you?
Yeah, it's a really fair question. We have some incredible internal leaders, many of whom have grown to a point where maybe they could have been that person and they had other opportunities that they went to in the time frame that they needed to do. And today, the way we built the company, really, we had an incredible executive team that led and made the decisions day to day. And I have no reason to believe that's not going to continue in that way. And there are people who are the decision makers who lead every day. And I think, I'll leave it to Danny and the board to decide what was right ultimately for the company, but there's a deep, deep bench of ready and willing and capable leaders today who will continue to drive the company forward, and they'll be working with Rob in the best way.
One of the things that was really at the top of our list in selecting a new leader for the company, once we woke up one morning and said, he's telling the truth, he's leaving,
Yeah.
He's retiring right now.
Once it sunk in.
It took a few weeks to actually get into the acceptance phase, but we said, all right, great. Then our choice is to find a leader, and I said this time and time again and meant it. We need to find a leader where if you work at Shake Shack, you go, you know what? I get to have a whole new learning opportunity, and I don't even have to leave the company I love. So that's what we're hoping happens, and that's what we're confident Rob will bring.
Yeah, the many stages of grief after your CEO announces his departure. Rob is coming from Papa John's Corner office, as I said before. Any plans to bring pizza to the Shake Shack menu?
No.
Well, don't say I didn't give you any ideas to toy with.
I didn't say never, I said no. No plans.
No immediate plans. Fair enough.
Although I've seen a couple pizza places trying to bring hamburgers to what they do.
How's that working out?
Not our problem at this
on
point.
what you're good at. That's what I would say. Stay focused on what you do well.
Randy, I presume that this is a reflective moment for you.
Yeah.
As you look over the past 20, 24 years at Shake Shack, what would you say, let's say the two most memorable moments as CEO, and what did you learn from them?
Wow. How do you cull it down into one or two? I think my favorite thing is I can picture now, I'm looking at them in my head, the number of people who started making $8, $10, $12, $15 an hour and now make six figures or more, who have paid off student loans, bought homes, gotten married, had children. When I think about how many people, worldwide too, by the way, this is not just here, there are people in China whose lives have changed, in Thailand, in Dubai. When I think about those people who now lead our company and where they came from and what they've achieved, that to me is the greatest thing we've ever achieved, without question, as a family. And you think about changing lives, like it is absolutely the best. And then the second one, I would say, we've had a tradition of leadership retreats over the years. Besides Danny knocking me down in the dunk tank once, which is a true story. When you bring people together who work all day in a hot, sweaty environment, cooking burgers all day, and you look them in the eye and give them the value and worth they deserve as workers and leaders, and show them how they can continue to develop, like that part of the journey has been the best times I think I've had working with our teams.
I'll end this particular segment with this question. You're staying on, if I'm not mistaken, until the end of 2024 as an advisor. How do you ensure that you're assisting while still providing the new CEO with the requisite autonomy? And similar question for you, because this is really your baby, Shake Shack, and you were, the head guy in charge in its infancy, executive chairman now. How do you make sure that you also gave him autonomy over the years?
Yeah, I think we were really clear about this, and Randy had, again, the humility to say, I'm going to stay out of the corner office. It's Rob's show. That wouldn't be healthy for anyone, not for the team, not for Randy, not for Rob. I said, Randy, I want you to stay on in the same way that you call on board members when you have questions for them. And you love when they're available to answer your questions. And you would only call them if that particular board member had an expertise you needed for that thing you were dealing with. And I said, I want you to be available to do that exact same thing for Rob, for me, for anybody on the team. You don't have to you won't be on the board. You don't have to come to board meetings. Just be willing to pick up the phone and share, because no one has your perspective on history. And it's not about guiding the company in any way. It's about answering questions that are asked.
Do you agree? Is it really about relaying that institutional knowledge?
Yeah, listen, I think fresh eyes are so good for every company at every stage. And listen, there's never been a burger that's been cooked that I haven't been around for in some form. But I have definitely hold certain ideas. I don't have a lot of sacred cows, but I've got some. And when people come to me with certain things, like they know where I'm going to start, it's really good to eliminate that. And that's there. The important stuff is there. People will always have well, what would Randy think about this? Okay, great. But now he's not the decision maker anymore. So my job is to have laid that foundation for everybody and now set it up so that the next phase of leadership, not just for Rob's fresh eyes, but for our whole team, to be able to say, like Danny said, well, I got a new lease on life if I'm some of our leaders who now get to learn from a different leader and take on things that, hey, you know what, Randy kind of had a thing about that one, I'm doing it. And that's awesome. That's what the company needs to take its next phase. You got to remember, Shake Shack, we have 500 plus restaurants, about 300 in the United States. When you think about who we are compared to, that sounds big, but we're not big at all when you compare us to the other really big restaurant companies out there. Yet our brand has always been way, way up here and compared to all those giant restaurant retail companies. So the opportunity is still really huge.
Do you consider Shake Shack a fast food restaurant? And then who is your target consumer?
Have you ever been to Shake Shack?
We're going to get into that.
It's not fast.
We coined a term years ago. We went when we were starting to really grow, where we called it fine casual. It's kind of taking the best ingredients that were born in the kitchen of 11 Madison Park that then translated into frozen custard and burgers, but in a casual atmosphere. So, some of the other words we struggled with over the years was this concept where we were like, oh my God, are we a chain? We just opened our 4th or 5th or 6th or 10th, like we're a chain. And we were like, no, we're not a chain, we're the New York fine dining guys. And it was eventually where we were like, no. If we agree that every time we add a link to the chain could get a little stronger, why not? And we stopped fighting that stuff and got into like saying like, yeah, well, there's this notion in the world that somehow through growth you get worse. And that doesn't have to be the way it is. And Danny taught us this in the way he opened his fine dining restaurants all these years. Why can't we make it a rule that every time we open another one, we get better?
Is it bad to be a chain? It's a little elitist.
No, it's not.
It's not. Why do you push back?
Let's see if we differ. You go first.
Sure.
Well, no, I don't think it is. When you're doing things that actually create more opportunity for animals to be raised the right way, and more opportunity for team members to grow, and for us to have an impact in a positive way, I think that's a pretty cool reason to grow.
We are in the era of the celebrity meal. McDonald's has partnered with J Balvin, with Travis Scott. Popeyes partnered with Meg Thee Stallion. She has her own sauce. Shake Shack hasn't gone down this route. I would love a Fortune by Shake Shack collaboration. So.
I like the sound of it. It's funny. Some of our marketing,
why not experiment there?
Our marketing team is here. I think we will. Is the answer. The beauty of Shake Shack is it's been this word of mouth brand for all these years, and we go and we open, in Korea, and there's 1,000 people online, and you say to yourself, like, how is this possible? And every time it just continues to flow like that. We've been able to get to this point in a really organic way. And now you start to say, like, and we have the most amazing marketing team and what they've done to build our brand, to connect with people. It's kind of incredible to us sitting here today because we think of our brand as this like transcendent thing, which it is. But when you get to a lot of places in the country, in the world, like we're actually more unknown than you might think. When we go to Birmingham, Alabama, and we open a restaurant, like there's a group of people who knows, and then most people don't. And the task, I think, as we go, and I think it's incredible that we've gotten this far for 20 years with basically no money spent on advertising. Imagine when you someday may see the Shake Shack commercial, and I'm confident we'll do it in a way that fits our brand, which is different and special. But if you think about how we've collabed, we've done it with some of the best chefs in the world. So we've had Danielle Boulud and Daniel Hume and Andrew Zimmern. You're talking about the greatest chefs in the world have cooked burgers with us at Shake Shack. And there ain't nobody in the burger business who can say that.
And that happens in country after country, not just here in New York City.
So we'll keep, that's right, we'll find the best chef in Japan and work with them.
Mexico.
So cool. So I think that'll always be at the core of the brand, but as we introduce ourselves more and more to more places in the country, it'll be important to keep helping people understand.
I'll also say that there's a number of folks who have found their way to Shake Shack, just to say, I want to be part of this brand. Got some great people from the sports world. In fact, why don't you tell a couple stories there?
I mean, we've got just so many different. Here's what's cool. We've been in all these movies, featured in movies, and I won't name them at the moment, but we've never paid for a product placement ever. Yet we're featured. And I think like when you can do it organically and you don't just see it as this posing thing that was paid to play, like that has been the magic of it, that people actually want to be a part of it for real and share that with their communities.
I want to talk about current socioeconomic pressures because I think most Americans can remember a grandparent, someone from another generation saying, I remember back in my day, burgers were about 5 cents, and I certainly lament when prices were that cheap. I'm now going to be that person. A single burger cost $3.10 at Shake Shack in 2004. It now costs $7.49. Do you see prices dropping as inflation stabilizes, and how do you still maintain that accessibility?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that prices can go down, unfortunately. I think when you think about the actual costs to bring great products to the table today, it's a lot more than $7.49, or it really is. And we've actually taken a lot less price than most of our peers, and we've certainly been much slower to do so. You know, prior to this last couple of years of crazy inflation, we've taken about 1.5% to 2% price a year. We've been really, really conservative on that. And I expect hopefully as inflation gets better, we can return to a more conservative approach on that. But I think when you think about price, you have to name value more than anything. And is what you're getting. And now you can compare that price to traditional fast food. We're actually not that much more. And you're getting hormone antibiotic-free cooked beef, whole muscle, like really, really good stuff that you should feel good putting in your body compared to other stuff that I'm not sure I want to eat with my kids. So I think that's always been our place, and this last few years has been really tough on every industry in prices going up. So hopefully that calms a bit.
I was just going to add that the price increases you see across the board in our whole industry, there's one good societal thing, in my opinion, that we talk about inflation all the time, but we don't talk about. Sometimes there are benefits, and one of the benefits is that people who work in our industry now have the opportunity to be paid more money, as they should. Americans learned some time ago to pay up for better quality ingredients. I wish I could say I feel better for the cow because the cow's getting paid more money right now, but I really feel better for people.
Yeah, you make an excellent point. So let's talk about the human capital aspect. In states like California, they're raising minimum wage. California in particular raised minimum wage to $20 an hour. We're seeing chains like Burger King and In-N-Out raise food prices in response to that. So if other states follow suit, what will be Shake Shack's response?
Well, we've had to raise our prices in California, again, a lot less than we needed to have that significant increase for our people. But as Danny said, we're happy to do it, and that's just part of what it is. I think if minimum wages do continue to go up, and we often pay much more than minimum plus health insurance opportunities for really, really good benefits in our company, we'll likely have to raise prices along with it. And I think that's just the cost of doing business. And I think our guests so far continue to say, that's worth it. It's something I really care about, and I'm going to do it right.
Our customer has to be someone who appreciates the value of what they're getting when they go to Shake Shack. If they're looking strictly to spend less money, they can do that. There will be a lot of places who won't put the same care into the ingredients. And it's not just the burgers, it's the quality of the chocolate that goes into the frozen custard, or the cage-free eggs that go into the frozen custard.
Well, then maybe your competitor isn't those fast food chains. Maybe your competitor is them eating at home and going to the grocery store and cooking for themselves.
Yes. They both are. I think there are times when our competitor is truly fast food. There are times when it's a casual dining or eating at home. But to Danny's point, like if you can get 10 chicken nuggets for $1, you should start to wonder. And I think like there's a certain price that needs to be paid to eat real food.
Fair enough. Look, Wendy's, I'm sure this isn't news to you, Wendy's announced their Uber-style use of dynamic pricing on their menus earlier this year, which some took to mean surge pricing, if you will. They quickly backtracked. That said, would Shake Shack ever mirror this strategy?
Yeah, I think that got some really bad press. Since I was in college, everyone's talked about yield pricing in restaurants. We all, for whatever reason, we're comfortable doing it on airplanes and hotels and lots of other things. However, the steak at Gramercy Tavern isn't going to be $80 at 8 p.m. and $40 at 5 p.m. yet. I've never seen it work. I don't think that's the way to do it. I think you got to figure out the right price all day long and figure out, never say never. And we always got to find ways to give value to people. And we generally do that not through discounts, but through adding things and giving you extra stuff.
I think restaurants that rely on frequency and repeat are very, very different than airlines or hotels or a Broadway show. I understand why a Broadway show has a different price on a Saturday night than they have on a Tuesday night, because they can, right? But I'm only going to see that show once. Even if I love it, I'm probably not going to go see the same show twice. We want people to come to Shake Shack weekly, minimally. And I think if you mess around with the pricing, there was a restaurant in New York. It was always the #1 romantic restaurant in the Zagat survey. And they actually doubled their wine prices for Valentine's Day. And boy, did they hear it from their customers. And next Valentine's Day wasn't busy at all.
Yeah.
We don't want to be in that business. There's 26,000 restaurants in New York City. How many airlines are there? They all say, we know you had a choice. Thank you for flying us. I didn't have a choice. There's only 4 of you.
The amount of smart people who have told me over the years, you could raise your prices a lot. You could. And my answer always was, yeah, but should we? Like, what? We're doing really well. Like, we got a good thing going here. Let's keep going.
The should you is providing more value to your shareholders.
It is, but I think our shareholders and those shareholders who've been with us for 10 years and those who understand and continue to be shareholders today, they understand that if our business philosophy, which we've shared forever, and Danny started in 1985, if we're taking care of our team first, we're taking care of our guests and our communities and our suppliers, if we are doing those things, we got a pretty good shot at taking care of our shareholders. And if we only put them first every time, that's not going to work out for them over the long run.
Yeah, there's a expression that I used in high school. I think it was in my yearbook, which is you can shear a sheep many times, but you can only skin him once. And we would much rather be in the sheep shearing business than the sheep skinning business.
I got to ask, what was your superlative in the yearbook?
Least likely to succeed.
You certainly proved them wrong. I want to pivot back to leadership. I'm curious how both of your leadership styles have changed over the years. Let's say over the last 2 decades. Danny, kick it off.
I think that Randy has helped me to be more expansive in my leadership style.
What do you mean?
Willing to expand. How's that? I never, ever wanted a second version of anything. And I'm very, very open to that. And so, for example, we have a small but growing business called Daily Provisions right now. There's no way I would have considered doing that had it not been for the experience of Shake Shack.
Will there be a 12 and 13 Madison Park?
Let's put it this way. The second Daily Provisions is the exact same landlord as the second Shake Shack. Mr. Brusco.
Comes back sometimes.
That's right. So
yeah. I'll say Danny taught me and has taught all of us in his leadership. For me, one of the definitions, the biggest one of leadership is all day, every day, telling people what's important to you. And he has done that with me, for me, and with every leader all day, every day, to a point where it's like your parents telling you to eat your vegetables. You're like, I got it.
Stop
like, really,
talking
I got
about
it.
Yeah.
But that is what it is. And I had a moment last week that I knew that had trickled into Shake Shack. The general managers, of which we have 300, and they're all their leaders. There was more than 300 people on a Zoom call. And it was kind of like my goodbye. And I got on this call and I had written a speech of all the stuff I was going to tell them was important to me. And for the first 15 minutes of the call, they were having their meeting and they were doing every one of the things I was about to say, don't forget to do. And I literally stopped my whole speech and I didn't do any of it. And I just said, like, you guys are living it. You're living it. And a great leader all day, every day, tells everybody what's important to them. And he taught me that. It's been one of the greatest lessons of my life. And it comes into all parts of our life. And I think that has been the hallmark of what we've tried to do as leaders.
How has the workplace culture changed, particularly from a small, scrappy team pre-IPO to now a more sprawling company post-IPO? And then also, how do you maintain that culture from franchise to franchise to franchise to location?
Yeah, it's one of the great challenges and most exciting things we can do. One of my mantras with the team has been every day we wake up and we need to do what everyone else is unwilling or unable to do. That has not changed from day one till today. We do it in different ways now, but I tell that to every single person I've ever interviewed. It is part of our world of, if you would like to move mountains, this is a really good place for you. If that's not interesting to you, like, that's really okay. Not everybody wants that in their life, but there's probably another place you should work. And that is the setup from day one, is we're gonna work really hard and we're gonna do things nonstop, getting better and better and better and better and better. And I promise you, I'm gonna give you every day a level of energy that will inspire, and I'm gonna ask you to try your best to give me back the best that you can give. And I think that today remains the same, no matter what. The problems are different, the challenges are different, the systems needed to tackle problems are different, but the heart of serving someone a cheeseburger, that hasn't changed. And if we can keep doing that well in every interaction, even though there's millions of them now, we can do it. We can do it.
And I think that it's not easy, what Randy just described, because there's a tension between management and leadership. Management is pretty much a 19th century technology to assure compliance. And to actually, if you say to somebody, how are you doing? And they go, I'm managing. It's not a very uplifting answer, is it? What they're basically saying is, I'm managing to keep all the problems at bay. Whereas leadership, really good leadership, is taking you to a place that could be kind of scary because you've never been there before. That's very different than managing. You kind of have to do both. But I think that it's really easy for businesses to get into the management place. Let's try to tame the ocean of its waves, because it's a little rough out there. What leadership does is it teaches you how to surf and distinguish yourself, because you didn't get knocked off your surfboard when everybody else did.
Final question before we move on to the absolute final segment. Today, social issues, geopolitical issues make their way into the workplace. The Israel-Hamas conflict in particular has been a huge point of contention on college campuses, certainly within businesses. You all opened your first restaurant in Tel Aviv in Israel in February, and from that came petitions to boycott the chain. Did you expect that response? And if so, what was the thought process behind still going forward with it? Was there a scenario plan involved?
Well, we were lucky in the early days of Shake Shack in 2009 when we had 2 restaurants, that a man named Mohammed Al-Shaya came to us from Kuwait and said, come open restaurants in the Middle East with us. And we have since built a beautiful business throughout the Middle East, in Kuwait, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Oman, all throughout the Middle East. That was the beginning of our international company, and we have had tremendous success and great relationships there. Our vision of Shake Shack is, wherever we go in the world, we're going to do what we can to be the best local partners and communities in the communities that we do business in, wherever that is. And there's lots of places in the world that are challenging, and it has been our belief that we should continue to go serve people. And I'll tell you, I've spent a lot of time on airplanes and a lot of time in places all over the world in the 19 countries we do business with, more to come. And one thing I know to be true, no matter where you go, people are just human beings trying to get through their day, enjoy their lives, and take care of their families, wherever that is. And to the extent we can build a business that helps that happen, that's what we're going to do. And we've been fortunate to do that in a lot of places.
Are you in agreement? And I mean, how do you decide when to stand up and when to shut up when it comes to social issues?
I think it's important to express the company's point of view on social issues when it's very, very much connected to what the company stands for in the first place. And I also think that as a company, if I speak up, I'm speaking up for a company, I'm speaking up for everyone who works in that company. I need to be really judicious about that. And so therefore, if it's completely connected to our company's business and you chose to work for that company, you kind of signed up to hear what I think about it. If it's not connected to our business, I got to be careful because there's a lot of livelihoods at stake.
Rapid fire, the fun part. Favorite order at Shake Shack?
I get a double smoke shack with a lettuce wrap so I can eat light, and then have a chicken shack, cheese fries, and black and white shake. That's my
that's
big order.
light?
You have to have the lettuce wrap on the burger so it lightens up and allows you to have all the other good stuff.
Okay, but you have a regular bun with a chicken shack.
Definitely.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Mine is pretty simple. My absolute favorite order is a double cheeseburger with one slice of onion, a coffee milkshake, and fries.
With the buns, no lettuce.
Yeah, the lettuce gets all juicy and, it's hard to eat that way. I don't want a fork and knife. I'm a hamburger guy.
If you had to choose one, shakes or floats?
Shake.
Shake.
Hot dogs or burgers?
Burgers, but I love me a good Chicago-style hot dog from time to time.
Same here.
Really? Even though that was the...
We have to remember from whence we came.
Right. Fair enough, fair enough. All right. Worst piece of advice you got that burned you in your career?
Worst?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you got one? You want to go first on that? I think anybody who ever tells you, I had a moment with him, I remember. This wasn't him giving me bad advice. This was him giving me good advice. I don't even remember this. Danny was interviewing me before I even started to work at Tabla. So this would have been 1999. And I said something like, it was kind of like a tough guy, manager guy thing to say. And you stopped me. I remember this. And you're like, why do you feel like you have to lead that way? And I was like, oh God, maybe I don't need to be that. So I think people who give you advice that you got to be, so tough about things, or like, that there's lots of ways to get. There's lots better ways to get the job done.
I've only gotten good advice my whole life.
Including from this guy?
I would like to share that, there's a gift that a lot of people don't have in business, and that is the ability to lead sideways, down, up, and Randy has done an amazing job of leading in all directions.
What will you miss most about Shake Shack?
I'm going to miss the day-to-day, truly friendships. I think a lot of people say you got friends at work, and maybe you do, but I was writing some thank you notes to some folks this last week as I was winding down, and you really think about like people who've worked with for decades and how many things you've been through together, losing your luggage in China, trying to figure out the right menu item in Thailand or London or Pittsburgh. And those relationships are meaningful. It was always more than a job. It has always been that for the team at Shack.
What's next for Shake Shack?
Building on this extraordinary foundation, continuing to grow at the pace we're now growing, and continuing to field the most thoughtful, talented, caring team of human beings who love serving each other as a way to help serve our guests.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a solid place to end. Actually, this interview has made me quite peckish. So I decided to buy some Shake Shack. First time trying Shake Shack. So we're going to do this on camera. I have cheese fries, which I actually save for later.
Well nice done.
And I got a Smoke Shack, actually. So here we go.
We're gone.
But with buns. Today's not a healthy day, so can we zoom in?
Oh, that looks good.
This looks delicious. It
looks
smells
like
even better.
perfect.
All right, here goes nothing. Ready?
Now here goes everything.
People don't
Here goes
realize how
everything.
good it is an hour later. It's so good.
Delicious. Truly.
You wouldn't just say that.
No, I wouldn't. All right. Thank you
Ruth.
both so much for your time. And that's a wrap.